All right. I think this is going to be it for tonight because Kurt, didn't he text and say that they were babysitting this evening?
They had all eight grandkids. I saw them this morning, and so the four from one, four from another, and they were all together for the first time in a while. So I said, hey, grandkids over nerd Bible group is totally the right choice. So
that's a lot of grandkids to watch also.
Heck yeah. So, but I think they were doing like a birthday party or something tonight. So I think it was going to be, all the family together. But yeah, they're pretty excited about it. Well, yeah, I think this is going to be it for tonight. I'm pretty sure.
Yep. So we can start. I hope you guys have some stuff because I spent about an hour on this and I was like, I don't think there's anything more to do here. So I don't know. What was your experience with this word?
I felt kind of the same way. It didn't seem as much to dig into as the other words. But there was a lot of variety in the way it was translated in the Old Testament and a lot of the different books. Anyway.
So I'm curious, how many of you did the word study before watching the video? Did anybody do that this week? Okay. I did. Now, granted, I have watched that video before, but it's been a while and I've filled my brain up with a lot of other things since then. So maybe it was there subliminally. But this is the one that I feel like just by doing the things that we've talked about, you could have literally gotten everything that Tim talked about in that video. Every single thing. Because it's just a simpler word, So it's just kind of cool to see that. It's like, okay, I think we're doing this technique correctly because it is yielding the exact same results that he's talking about. So.
And Christina, I think you brought up last week, you were asking some additional questions about what about some additional things added into the depth of meaning of some of the words. And I said this week, this word would kind of cover the gamut of a lot of the other things. And like Nathan and I were talking about, it's almost like the writer said, by the way, if there's anything else that I forgot to put in here, let me just cover with the word muchness, just like, and pretty much everything else, which we thought was kind of cool. So I don't know if that made sense, after you kind of looked at the definition and if that worked or you had any questions about it, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it definitely was a surprise. That's not how I thought that word would be translated. I guess it wasn't a good way to translate it. But yeah, I never would have thought of it that way, but it was really interesting because I feel like it was just like, let me compromise the whole thing, all of it together should be doing this. So that was kind of cool to see it all come together in that last word. And yeah, kind of like you were saying, if I left anything out, just everything, just with everything you have and are and can be, you should be, loving God and loving others. So I was like, it's kind of it was interesting for sure. But yeah, I was really surprised when I looked at it and was like, that's what that word is. That's just not what I expected at all. And then it was interesting because in the video, they were talking about how when they wrote it into the New Testament, that's, I guess, where the word strength kind of came from because they didn't really have any other way to translate it. And so then now that's what we use in English. I thought that was kind of interesting too, just that they were probably just as puzzled as we are with it, what does this mean? But yeah, it was very interesting. And I do feel like it summed up some of that a little bit. Because yeah, I was I feel like I'm exchanging one body part for another in each of these words, trying to figure out how I'm supposed to be loving God. So now it's just all covered.
Yep.
Covered with everything.
Oh, sorry. I think it kind of helps me understand the verse a little better though, because I always wondered, how do you love God with your strength? The way that we think the word strength power, and we think of it as a physical thing. So I mean, muchness and your everything and your all your being makes more sense than to love God with your strength. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know why, but when you were talking about that, I thought about, did you guys ever hear of those Christian ministries that like they're the bodybuilders for Christ or whatever? And
Power team.
they rip, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I knew there was a name for it and I wasn't getting it right, but they like rip phone books in half. It's like, I'm loving God with my strength. I don't know. That's what came into my head when you were talking.
That is like bringing back some old memories there, David.
Yeah. But yeah, I do. Yeah, I think there is something to, well, so here's something I forgot to say last week, because when I was looking at Nefesh, and actually it started the week before when I was looking at Lev or Levav, the heart word, I noticed that those two get paired up all the time. And so it's like heart and soul, with all your heart and soul, with all your heart and soul. And it just like over and over again in the Old Testament and then in the Hebrew Bible, you can see those two being paired together, right? And so I really do think heart and soul is a lot of times used as like this summary of your entire being. You know, because I think that's what they're saying in those verses when they say, love God with all your heart and soul. There's even one time where it's really cool because it talks about, I think it's in Jeremiah, where God says, I will return you to the land after exile with all my heart and soul. And so God is saying, like, essentially, like, with all of me, I'm going to make sure you guys get back, which is, you know, just neat. Because there's that reciprocity there, right? Like, I'm asking you to do something, but I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not willing to do and going to do myself. That was a tangent, but my point is, heart and soul, I really do think that's supposed to mean like all of you, because you know the way they thought of heart was essentially your mind, your intellect, your will, all, even your emotions to some extent, that kind of stuff. And then your soul was kind of like the it encapsulated like the physical part of you, your desires, all of that stuff. So it's kind of like all covered with those two words. So I love the way that Tim talked about how to put Meod in there at the end. It's almost like you already said all you needed to say it's all of you, but just to make sure you've really got it, I'm going to also put this word Meod on there, which I love that he used the word intensifies, because I use that word a lot as I was looking through the verses. I'm like, okay, this just makes things more intense. And I think that's what it's doing in the Shema. It's intensifying the fact that it's all of you. Like, make sure it is all of you. So I don't know. I just think that's cool, because that word didn't necessarily have to be there. But I think Moses is like, no, you guys need to you need to understand this is like all you got, 100%.
Yep.
If I was a coach, I'd say 110%, but a teacher who likes math, and I know that's not possible. So
So did anybody want to take a shot at reading it, maybe trying to insert their own interpretation on it? Like what you got out of it?
meaning the whole verse.
Yeah, just a
Okay.
verse and just trying to replace the word with something that you feel like fits for your definition.
I did.
No one has to.
It kind of reminded me of the Amplified Bible when I did it. It was sort of like they put some things in parentheses when you read the Amplified, but it doesn't flow very well the way I wrote it. But I wrote, listen and obey, Israel. He will be, the Lord is one. You shall love, parentheses, fear and serve the Lord with all your mind and will, with all your being, and with your muchness, your everything, all that is within you. So
I like that. That's really good.
Yeah, that is really good. Man.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't flow the way we know it, but yet it expresses that there's a little bit more to it. And I think that that's what's the most important thing. That's what my heart for everybody doing this was to get out of this. I know Nathan as well, is we really just wanted you guys to see there's a lot more to this than what maybe we understood, and what I understand. There's still more things I'm learning. So I think the fact that you guys have come with all kinds of great feedback has been super encouraging to both Nathan and I, for sure. So and it excites me to keep studying and learning new things as well. So
And
I
that was
think what's
two
so
verses.
crazy. I'm sorry, Nathan.
No, go ahead.
I just say what's crazy is we only did one verse.
That's right. That's what I said.
The whole meaning of this one verse is so different now than like what I thought.
Mhm.
So it just like shows like we really do need to put in the work to better understand like what scripture is saying to us. But it's a lot of work. Like I can't imagine. I mean, we took weeks to do one verse. So it's like it's a little intimidating still, but I definitely think it proves the point that like there's more to what we're reading than what we're like realizing from our translation, I guess.
Mhm.
So here would be an interesting thing to think about, because it is just one verse, but I think anytime you do this, you're not just understanding one verse. What you're doing is doing a better job of putting yourself into the brain of an ancient Israelite. And so then the next time you do it, you might see some words that you're like, okay, I know what they mean by that now, right? So what are some of the mind shifts that you've gotten out of this as we've gone through this verse? Or these verses? I guess there were two verses technically, because we started with 4.
Well, I don't know if this is what question. It's just you can't just rely on your English definitions. Like when you read a verse, you can't just I know what that means in English, and expect that you necessarily know exactly what the verse is saying. I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but like, like I was just saying, the English meaning for strength just didn't ever make a whole lot of sense to me, but I didn't think to look up the original language and figure out what that word actually meant, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the like trying to, I think I have a better understanding of like this much better of an understanding of like the culture and the technology. Like it's just important as you're reading to kind of keep that piece in mind. Like what was their culture? What was their understanding in that time period? Because I think like we saw last week, even when, Jesus added the word mind when saying back this verse, and it was like, okay, so now they had a better understanding, the people did, so they could, you know what I mean? And that was just, a period of years, and we're talking now there's this even greater expanse of time. So just remembering to like put yourself back a little bit and really think through like, okay, what was their knowledge and their technology and their ability to grasp some of these concepts, and how is the author trying to accommodate for what they know and what their culture is. And so I think just remembering to do that will be really important for me going forward. I definitely think that, yeah, I'll just like, even now when I'm reading my Bible, I'll get to a word and be like, I wonder what that one means. Like there's probably more there. So I think just even, it's definitely piqued my curiosity of wanting to go and actually look up some of those like keywords that are jumping off the page and figure out, okay, what does that actually mean? Or is it what it kind of what it says? Like, how great of a translation is it? So I think those were like my big takeaways. But, and now I feel like I know the skills to actually like, I don't, again, I'm still not great. It's going to take practice, but I think I have enough skills to like, when I see a word like that, go and look at it and know where to start. Whereas before I was like, I don't know how to look that up. Don't ask me.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to do that more and see if I can get better understanding.
That's awesome. And the other thing too is this is kind of, in a way, this is kind of like a building block, because you guys kind of got the broad overview in the first class, you know, like what is the Hebrew Bible, putting yourself in some, you know, a bit of a contextual meaning, like, you know, let's put it in the right context. Then you got the word study and kind of talking a little bit about how introduction to, like, maybe you should look at words a little bit deeper. And then now you actually got the hands-on part of it. And so you have to combine not only the individual word study, but then also the context in which it was written. When sometimes that word isn't quite making sense, you can look at the before and the after, or the chapters before, chapters after, and sometimes that is a good indicator of what that word could be leaning towards, or how it was intended to be conveyed to the audience of that time. So I just, again, I'm learning new stuff through this as well. So it's really cool to actually, you know, I have a book, you know, a Strong's dictionary, a physical Strong's dictionary, but using the online concordance was so much faster. There's so much more you could dig into and get lost in. And I thought that was kind of cool as well. I've never really spent a lot of time looking into that as well. So this has been a really cool experience for me as well.
Okay. I maybe asked my question wrong, because those are great, like 1,000-foot in the air answers. I'll give you an example of what I was thinking about, because for me, the word love changed when we did this together. So now, like, I keep thinking about this. What do I mean when I say I love you to someone? Because I think, and I've known for a long time that love is an action. But I've just been so hyper aware since then of how that word is used by everyone around me, and even by myself, like just the words that I like when I say I love you. I almost feel like it's not that we should point out the good things that we're doing, but it should almost be more like, hey, I loved you. Did you see that just then? I loved you. Yeah, in that moment, I did. You know, and so just really reshifting our brain, thinking this is so much more about what we do than it is about anything that we feel in any moment, you know, because that's how Jesus loved us, right? You know, and so it's, again, I knew all of this, but it just got deeper and it got richer for me. And now I'm, like I said, I'm just hyper aware of that word anytime it gets used, the word love. And I'm like, we're not using that the way that the Bible does most of the time. So do you guys have any examples of anything like that, where there's a specific word that you're like, yeah, that really changed for me, and now anytime I see that in the Bible or anytime it's used, I'm thinking different.
I think love is probably one that was huge. I think that, yeah, it definitely, like real life application wise, I feel like that word, like you're saying, you just think a little differently about it, and you think about, okay, what are my actions showing? How are my actions showing love? So yeah, I would agree with that one. I think soul was kind of the same way. Like I always thought of soul as like a part of you that floats away when you die. Like, I don't know. And so that, like, having a better understanding of that, I think even made me think differently about like, what's resurrection look like? And what is life after death look like? And maybe we conceived this idea that isn't really there, the evidence for it isn't really there. So that one definitely kind of made me ponder a little bit more too. I still don't feel like I have a good answer as to what happens, post right here, right now. And pre Jesus coming back. But that one I think was another word that definitely made me think a little differently or ponder a little bit more than I had before.
I'm glad to hear you say that one, because I think that one's super important. And the Western church is just off base on that one a lot of the time, yeah, that was a big one for me when that really started to sink in for me, that it's not about where I go when I die. Eternal life starts now. The kingdom of God starts now, while I'm here in this body. What I do in this body matters, and this earth is going to be recreated. Heaven and earth are going to come together. Heaven's coming down to earth. We're not, the point is not for us to go up to heaven. The point is for heaven to come down to earth. So how can we be a part of that right now? So everything Tim talked about this morning too, if you guys got to go to church, I listened to it obviously, but yeah, just talking about all the for the loose stuff, that's the kingdom coming. That's us bringing a little piece of the Garden of Eden to the world around us. That's heaven and earth coming together. That's all of this, and we're doing this in our bodies as we live our lives physically. And I think that's part of what it means to love God with your strength. It's soul and that's a physical thing that we're doing. It's yeah, I don't know. I just could talk about that one for a really long time, because I feel like it would make such a difference in the way that a lot of us think about the world. We shouldn't be like running and hiding until Jesus comes back and takes us away from this awful place. That's not the point. We should be going into the world and making disciples, because Jesus called us to bring his kingdom to other people, show other people what sacrificial love really looks like. So I don't know.
I'm glad you reiterated that point, because I don't know, when didn't we do soul like last week? I already kind of forgot what you had said, because you said that last week, I think too, about eternity being like now, and I'd already forgotten it. But that's such a good reminder. And I think especially going into the school year and just remembering that the work God has put before me is ordained by him, and that's my way to love, and that's my mission field, even though not allowed to proclaim Jesus in front of all my students, and I'm it's different, but that's still the mission field God's called me into, and there's still ways to work and do that. And so that's a great reminder on the eve of heading back to school. just remembering the work we do now matters, and we're not just waiting around.
I think
it's the same way. It's the same concept. So sorry, Joseph.
No, you're fine. Yeah, I think because I've had this exact conversation with so many people. In fact, this morning at church, I was talking with another friend of mine who was talking about Jeff Henderson's message last week. And I was just saying how I love when he speaks, because he speaks my language. When he talks about God in the workplace, that's me. That's been my thought and philosophy for as long as I can remember, that my mission field is in business. I feel like that's where God does the best work in my life and through me, is in the business world. And but one thing that I think of often, it's not what I say, it's what I do. It's the reflection that you have, because God works through our actions oftentimes more than he does our words. So I just want to I say that to encourage you, Christina, because I think that it's sometimes through the actions that people can truly see the love of Jesus. And whether or not you say it, God has a way of communicating that, I think, and you might just be the path in which they find Jesus because of the kindness through you that leads them and points them back to Jesus in you. And anyway, I just say that more as an encouragement, that to solidify your point that yes, it is super important. And I think that that's really how we are going to change the world, is not in our words, not yelling from a street corner, but actually going to the street corner and talking to people and loving them well, and taking them food, and being kind and being a safe place for them, and creating that little safe space here on earth. So anyway, just kind of want to throw that out there.
This has been a while ago, but was anyone's concepts changed at all when we talked about the difference between Yahweh and Elohim? If you remember, that was a long
I'm trying to remember back like that far in conversation.
Yeah. If not, that's okay. I mean, it really was, that was a long time ago. But that was a big one for me too, just sort of realizing what Yahweh meant. And when that word is used, that's the covenantal relational name of God for the people of Israel. And so he's made this covenant with these people, and those are the people he gives that name to, right? That's his special name with them. And so that's just, again, that's cool because, now we are, I think Paul teaches this pretty clearly in the New Testament, we are part of that covenant. And so we're in, and so, all of this energy and this focus and everything that God, all his attention and his emotion and everything that he pours into loving and caring for Israel, even when they do not deserve it, all of that comes to us as well. And I don't know, that's just remembering who Yahweh really is, and just seeing the way that he behaves in the Old Testament, and how he's just constantly, he's like gritting his teeth, determined to not let these people get away from him permanently. That's just cool, and I've been trying to soak in that love a little bit more this summer. So that was a big one for me as well.
And Elohim was just like more the generic God,
A
correct?
powerful spiritual being. Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to remember. I was like, I remember kind of more about Yahweh, but I forget what that one meant. So yes, yeah, I agree. It definitely has made me think about the way I pray too, and just what I'm calling God. And it definitely makes just saying like God, praying just to God seems almost wrong now.
Oh yeah, and we did talk about that too, didn't we? That the translation of that in the New Testament almost seemed like Father, right? That was kind of the word that sort of conveyed that same idea, because now you're saying it in Greek, and it's not necessarily, it's not Yahweh anymore. But I just think Elohim is the way that most people in our society think of God when they think of God. This distant, far away, powerful spiritual being who started the world. Maybe he still intervenes in it every once in a while, but for the most part, he's just kind of letting it run. Not this God who's intimately involved in everything and is so rooting for us to get this right, because that's what he made us for in the first place, as image bearers. He wants us to get this right, and he's, he'll almost stop at nothing to make sure that we get this right eventually. So I don't know, I like that.
But does anyone have anything else they want to share? And, before we go, I think Nathan and I kind of talked about a couple of things we want to close out with, and maybe some updates, some questions we want to throw out to you, and we'll throw out to the group. But anything else you guys want to add?
I had a question. I don't know if it's a good idea to bring it up because you guys have been doing a great job of like bringing up application and stuff. And this is kind of more of a specific thing. But I was just wondering, when we were talking last week about how Jesus said, love the Lord. He changed the Shema a little bit by saying heart, soul, mind, and strength. And Nathan, you were saying that you didn't think Jesus had said it that way, but that the disciples had changed it or written it differently to make it more relevant to the culture. And I was just wondering why Jesus wouldn't have changed it to make it more relevant to the current culture.
Well, okay, so let me say that again, because maybe I didn't state that as clearly as I wanted to. He didn't have to. When you're speaking in Hebrew, the words you're saying, you can get your point across by saying the exact same words that are in the Shema. Does that make sense? Because I think Jesus probably was speaking in Hebrew when he spoke this, either Hebrew or Aramaic, probably. Now, Aramaic, I don't know.
Because he was talking to a Jewish
Because he was talking to a Jewish audience. Yes.
Okay.
So then you get to the writers of the New Testament. They're writing in Greek because now this is a movement that has gone out, and so they need to be able to communicate in Greek with people. And so now they're thinking, okay, so this thing that we've said this whole time in Jewish culture, in Israelite culture, how do we communicate this effectively to a Greek audience? And I think that's probably why they said,
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not that Jesus
Okay.
wouldn't have done that. If he had been speaking in Greek, I think he absolutely would have done the same thing. But because he's speaking to a Jewish audience, I would imagine he probably wasn't speaking in Greek.
I just misunderstood. I thought you meant that they changed Jesus's words.
Well, they did. Because
Expounded.
it's in a totally different language.
Because they wrote it in a different language.
You have to change someone's words when you write it in a different language.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because I didn't communicate that as clearly as I wanted to last week.
Well, I just didn't understand it the way you communicated it. It might not have been your words, but my brain. But anyway, thanks for expounding on that a little bit.
I have a weird question. I'm just like thinking this through in my head. Have they ever taken the New Testament and tried to translate it back to into Hebrew? I mean, obviously it wasn't written in Hebrew, but I'd be interesting to see what words they use if you go back the other direction.
That is an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that.
I wonder if that's been done. I mean, there's a lot of Messianic Jewish congregations or groups of people that are Jewish, but they believe in Jesus as a Messiah. I wonder if they've ever done, most of them probably don't speak or know Hebrew themselves.
I'm gonna display my ignorance right now. So are there people living in Israel now that Hebrew is the only language that they know? I don't know. I'd have to look that up. Because it would be interesting to think about, okay, well, if you want to be able to share the Jesus story with those people, it would need to be in Hebrew. I mean, Jewish people were displaced for so long, they just spoke the language of whatever culture they were living, for a really long time until the 40s or the 50s, I guess it was the 50s, that they ended up getting some land back in what was ancient Israel. So yeah, that's an interesting question, Christina. I've never thought about that. I was
Yeah.
really interested in Bible translation for a little while. Thought that maybe that was something that I wanted to do. And it does sort of like just doing this again, it reminds me of what I would have loved about that. And just how do you take something in one language? How do you effectively communicate it in another language? And I think anyone who has translated the Bible into another language has to have just such a deep understanding of what the Bible says. Oh, that reminds me. Okay, so I'm gonna try to remember to do this. If I haven't done it the next day or two, I will actually have some time tomorrow, oddly enough, because I won't be at school. But I found these. This is for anyone who like wants to take this to the next level, because we all have lots of free time, right? I found these websites that they do YouTube videos to help you learn Hebrew and learn Greek. And the premise behind it is so cool because they don't speak any English the entire time in the whole class. They're saying Hebrew words and they're like doing illustrations or visuals, or maybe they're acting it out in a story kind of thing. And one of the big reasons they said they're doing it that way is because they have a real heart for people who are translating the Bible into other languages. They don't want them to have to translate it from English. They want to help those people to learn Hebrew and Greek so they can translate it from the original languages. And if they don't say any English words, if they're just saying Hebrew words and showing images and that sort of stuff, then this can be for anybody all over the world, right? It's not just for English speakers. They can teach Hebrew to anybody. So I just thought that was really cool. So I'll share the links, because it's basically just a series of YouTube videos, and they have a website as well where you can do some extra exercises and stuff like that. But I thought about doing it just at the very least so that I could learn the Hebrew alphabet. So I would at least, when I'm doing some of these word studies, I'm not just looking at something that makes absolutely no sense to me, you know? So anyway, just thought I would mention that because it's, again, that's not something that probably any of us really have time for, but I just think it's cool. So I'll share the links in case anyone doesn't.
Anybody else got anything? Any other questions? Any other comments? I'll take that as a no. All right. Well, there's just a few things we wanted to say, and of course I'll let Nathan, do the final closeout. But there's a few things that Nathan and I have been talking about leading up to the end of this class. On what what's coming up. What some options are, what our hope is, and then also just a general question about getting together. But one thing in particular we've been talking a lot about is, and we've said it throughout this whole process, we'll continue to say it most likely, this whole study, what we're doing here using the Bible Project, the word studies, whatever we're doing with the Zoom calls, this is never ever meant to be the Joseph or Nathan show. This is like, we'd be just as happy to step out of the way and let somebody else take the reins if that's what they wanted to do, and continue forward, and we would still be active parts of continuing to learn ourselves on our own journeys. But we've had a couple people bring up to us about like, hey, I'd really like to do this with a family member or a group of my friends or whatever. So we just kind of wanted to let you guys know that obviously our heart is to share this information and what we're learning with as many people as possible as well. And so any way that we can duplicate ourselves, we're going to continue to do that. So if you or anybody is interested in like, hey, we might want to go through this as a group somewhere else, or we want to go back and do the Hebrew Bible study, or you want to do a different study. And Nathan and I, we want to make sure that you guys know that we're here to share all what we've learned about setting up a WhatsApp account, setting up a group, some of the things that we've talked about not doing, or that we have talked about doing. If you guys ever want that information, we'll obviously share it with you. We'll help you. We'll help you get set up so you can do that. So we just want you guys to be aware that, what we're doing here, don't feel obligated. If you want to start your own group, you can. And again, we'll be happy to share that with you. So just want to throw that out there. The second thing that we wanted to talk about was, and we'll put this out in the group text as well, is, obviously we got together once this summer, and it was great. I feel like everyone had a great time. I know I did, and our family did. But we kind of wanted to throw out, see if there's any interest in getting back together, maybe sometime in September, or even if it pushes into October, just because obviously kids are going back to school and, people are getting into new routines. So we don't want to like interrupt that flow, but, we just wanted to throw that out there as well. And we'll put it out there. So something for you guys to think about is, if that's something you're interested in, Nathan and I will probably try to come up with a couple dates and throw them out and just take a poll and see who's game for what. And if you're not interested, that's cool too. We just want to make sure we let you guys know that's something that we are thinking about. We would love to do again if possible. We'd love to get together with you guys again. And then the last thing that I was going to bring up anyway was, we haven't set an official start date, but as we said before, Nathan and I both agree that we should probably take a few weeks off, just to give everyone an opportunity to, again, that we have people who have kids and, school year, we have a lot of teachers, obviously. So give you guys an opportunity to just focus in on getting back into your daily life routine. So we'll probably try to start back up again. Don't have a specific day, but maybe later September, or even again latest early October, and with the Heaven and Earth class, which again, Christina, you've already brought this up, alluded to this, a whole idea of like what happens later. This is a super great class. I know Nathan has been through it. I've not been through this specific class. However, I've done a lot of videos from Tim Mackey and their group, and then a lot of individual articles that they've written on it, which again, I'm very excited to actually go through a class that they've structured. But I think everyone will get a lot out of it as well. So that's kind of where we're going next. And we will be throwing it out to everybody that, hey, if you want to join in the class, feel free to do so. If not, you don't have to. So, please, we know you guys may want to, or you may not want to, but just when we do throw that out there, just be mindful. And if you wouldn't mind, even if you don't want to, just shooting it out to the group, or send Nathan or myself an individual text if you don't feel comfortable sharing it with the group. Just let us know, hey, take us off the list or whatever, because we want to be respectful of your guys' time. And if there's somebody that you feel like would benefit or want to bring into the group, let us know that as well, and we can make sure they get added to the next class that we start back up. So anyway, those were the three big kind of announcements or things that we wanted to talk about, a little bit about what's coming, and make sure that you guys kind of know what's coming down the pipeline. So yeah.
Can I ask, are we going back to the old format where it's more just on the WhatsApp? We won't be like meeting up weekly on Zoom or
Good question.
anything?
Yeah. So I think kind of our, not that we have to keep this going forever, but I think our idea had kind of been that this will be a little bit cyclical, like during the fall and the spring, we can do those classes where you're basically just watching the videos and you're chatting on the WhatsApp if you see things that you are enjoying or learning, that sort of stuff. And then maybe in those in between times, like maybe in the winter, maybe excuse me, maybe in the winter, maybe only in the summer. We haven't really talked that through necessarily, but we could do more word studies. We've already got another great word study that we could do where it's the verse in Exodus where God reveals himself to Moses. Or actually, no, I take that back. It's not at the burning bush. It's right after the golden calf, and God basically tells Moses, here's who I am, and he's describing his character. And there are some really cool words to study in there. So that was kind of our thought, is that it could be like a cyclical thing where we're doing the classes during the fall and the spring, and then we're and just chatting on the WhatsApp, but not meeting on Zoom. But then the Zoom meeting things would be in the summertime, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I'm glad
Yeah.
you asked the question, because it will be, for those who have struggled to make it to a weekly online meeting, we totally get that, 100%. And sometimes it's a lot easier to just be able to watch or listen to a video. If you don't have time to watch it, just listen to it. You're gonna get a ton out of it just by listening to it also, and I have so much more time to listen to things than I do to watch things, because I'm doing dishes, or I'm walking the dog, or folding laundry, or whatever. So, just please, it does not have to be you sitting there taking notes as you're watching the video. You're going to get something out of it just by listening. And then I just want to echo what Joseph said. When Joseph and I talked at the end of last week's meeting, and he was like, we should really be encouraging people to do this with their friend groups if they're really excited about the Bible Project material. And I was like, that's genius. Why didn't I think of that? So yeah, if you ever feel like, okay, I love that Old Testament class, I just want to take a group of people and we'll just go through it, and we'll do a chat. And they don't have to be connected to the church at all. It could just be people that you're friends with and you want to go through it. That's great. We just want as many people to be exposed to this stuff as possible, because I think Joseph and I have experienced real life change from what we have learned in this Bible Project stuff. So anyway, we'll send out some information to you guys, because there will be some people who probably won't have a chance to watch the video. So we'll make sure that information goes on the WhatsApp as well. And maybe, I don't know, Joseph, I guess we should talk about this, but maybe we could do a survey, kind of like we did at the end of our last class, just to see who's wanting to go on, what would be an ideal start date, all of those kinds of things. So just be looking.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's probably what we'll end up doing, is we'll just kind of take what I just said to you guys, and we'll probably just put it in some kind of a survey. So it'd be super, super short, like maybe 4 questions or 5 questions, and something to comment with, and just say, hey, we're looking for your feedback. Maybe that's the way to do it. So that way people can have a little bit of, they don't have to just put it right out for everyone to see. I don't know. So, but yeah, something like that will happen for sure. All right. Well, I guess if there's nothing else, I hope you guys have a great, Christina, have a great first week. Beth, have a great week. Nathan, get better quickly so you can have a great first week to school.
Yeah.
But I hope you guys all have a wonderful week. This has been super fun. Thank you guys for participating and giving us such great feedback. And again, we look forward to continuing our conversation, as we move into the next class. So
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys, hosting ish.
yeah.
opening the floor. So yeah, it's been great and definitely learned a lot. So thank you.
Bye. See
All
ya.
right. See you guys all later.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.